There we go. So just so you know where you are at the Introduction to Fiscal Sponsorship webinar. Again, my name is Courtney, and I'm happy to answer your questions as we go. Just type them in the box as you need. Okay. Um, if also you seem to be having issues, if you can't hear me, if there's anything like that, feel free to type that in the box as well. So what we are going to cover today. So fiscal sponsorship, just what it is. It can be kind of a complicated reality. So I'm excited to be able to break it down a little bit for you to understand what it is an activity and how we do it. So what are best practices? So there are a variety of types of fiscal sponsor. So we'll talk to you about how to recognize, one, what is the right fiscal sponsorship relationship for you, and what are best practices across the field. We're going to share some of the benefits of fiscal sponsorship. Why enter into this type of business relationship? What can it do for you? What can it do for your art? And how can it be helpful? We'll talk about eligibility requirements. So what does it take to become fiscally sponsored? We'll talk specifically about ours and some of the criteria that other people can use. And we'll talk about the application process. Fiscal sponsorship, because of the nature of a relationship, does require an application. We have to know what type of activities we're sponsoring and what type of work you're doing. But first, let me introduce myself and the fiscal sponsorship team. So as you'll see, there are 6 of us. It's a tiny staff managing over 3,600 fiscally sponsored projects. So we'll see. We'll start with Nathan, who just flashed at the bottom. Nathan Zabidio. He's one of our program specialists. Diane DiBasella, our program director. Teresa Hubbard, another of our program specialists. Amanda Keating, a program associate. Myself, I'm in the center in the red box, also a program associate, and my name, like I said, is Courtney Harge. And Deborah Kwan, she is a membership associate. She generally handles your front desk needs. And between us, the 6 of us, we manage all of your projects. I'm also going to take a moment to talk about some of Fractured Atlas's other programs. First is insurance. We offer a variety of types of insurance, including many discipline-specific policies. We know that it can be hard for artists to find insurance to protect their unique interests, equipment, spaces, all of those things. And so you can find on our website a variety of types of insurance for your arts practice and or arts business. Also, our insurance program is many of our associates are practicing artists. So they aren't just speaking insurance speak at you. They understand on a very personal level what you need and how to connect that to what the insurance broker needs to make this connection happen and protect you and your work. It's also mostly managed online. One of the great things about working with Fractured Atlas is we are a tech company, so we put all of our resources online as often as possible. We try to make sure that your needs are easily accessible with an internet connection. We also have Artfully. And Artfully is a web-based software that makes selling tickets, taking donations, and tracking fans easy and affordable for all kinds of artists and arts organizations. So you can do a variety of things with it. Sell tickets, take donations, manage your contacts, and more. There are several ways in which you can do that, and it also connects to your fiscally sponsored project, should you be fiscally sponsored. It is an excellent resource and definitely worth checking out. And last but certainly not least is Space Finder. And Space Finder is a tool to connect artists with spaces. There's rehearsal space, performance space, uh, spaces with different types of flooring, and it tries to connect you to the space you need to present, rehearse, prepare your work. It's currently in a variety of cities and internationally, including Toronto. So it's excellent to look at Space Finder for all of your space needs. So to go back, talked about the focus of our Intro to Fiscal Sponsorship webinar. It's what is fiscal sponsorship? So it is a legal agreement with a 501c3 federally tax-exempt organization. To be a 501c3, you must be a nonprofit. So nonprofits are generally referred to interchangeably as 501c3s, which isn't entirely correct. But fiscal sponsorship is, like I said, your agreement or between an artist and arts organization and a 501c3 nonprofit like Fractured Atlas. It allows the sponsee or fiscally sponsored project to raise tax-deductible contributions through individuals and grants. So it opens the door to more fundraising opportunities. The amount of funds in the world available to individual artists is small and sadly getting smaller. But this, with fiscal sponsorship, is a tool to open that up to grants that are mostly available only to 501c3s. And it allows you to offer a tax deduction, to your individual donors, which is almost impossible to do just as an individual by yourself. So how that works is contributions are paid to your fiscal sponsor. So if you are fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas, grants or individual contributions would be made payable to Fractured Atlas, and they are held in a restricted fund for your project. So any fiscal sponsor doesn't just take the money and use it for what it wants. It is specifically receiving the money for the charitable purposes of executing your project. That is why the relationship is so important, because your fiscal sponsor has to understand what you are doing to be able to provide proper oversight over the funds and to understand what is an appropriate project-related expense. It also eliminates the barrier of applying for 501c3 status. Not every person or project or even small organization wants to be its own federally recognized 501c3. There are a lot of requirements. Sure, you don't necessarily have to pay income tax, but there are a lot of filings, regulations, and oversights that must be adhered to if you are a 501c3. So charities registrations, auditing, filing a 990, there are a lot of things that not every artist wants to do. Fiscal sponsorship allows for you, the artist or arts organization, to get some of the benefits of having a 501c3 without having to do that kind of onerous paperwork and having such a rigorous oversight. So, best practices for fiscal sponsorship. Some things to keep in mind when you are looking for a fiscal sponsor. Their fee. Every fiscal sponsor charges a fee, anywhere between 5 and 10%. Fractured Atlas's fee is 7%. There are also fees. Our fee does actually get less for check donations the more you raise. But these fees allow all the fiscal sponsors, any fiscal sponsor, to help manage those oversight and administrative costs that I was just telling you about for a program. So it is important to consider what is the size of your project, what is a fee that you think would be appropriate for what you need, and what are the services and oversights that you are getting in exchange for your fees. Oversight. So those filings, those kind of regulations are things that the fiscal sponsor can help you manage. Because funds are received by the fiscal sponsor and then released to the project is not immediately liable for those funds. How is that helpful? Well, let's say you raise a large amount of money. Let's say your project is a $100,000 project that you've raised all of that in a year, but you haven't incurred expenses yet. But you don't want $100,000 to be shown as income for you immediately because, again, you haven't incurred those expenses, and that could offer a change in your income bracket. So what you can do is, since your fiscal sponsor has the funds and is providing oversight over them, you don't have to request or release those funds until you need them. So that allows a level of planning and a level of security, knowing that you release funds as you need them. You don't have to be as responsible, or you don't have to be immediately responsible for reporting funds you haven't received. Additionally, all fiscal sponsors should provide oversight to make sure that the funds are raised properly and that they are spent properly. So this will involve receipts, invoices, contracts. It'll help you manage your arts business in a better, more efficient, more effective way. So ownership. Most fiscal sponsors, including Fractured Atlas, will never own any of your work or any of the rights to it. So that is helpful to know that for this assistance, for your fees, for this oversight, you still maintain complete control of your work. There are some fiscal sponsors that different types of fiscal sponsors that may ask for input or that may ask for a piece of it, but you are fully within your right to decide what type of relationship works for you. Like I said, we at Fractured Atlas don't own any of your work or any of the rights to it. So it's a great way to execute the work in the way that you want it without having to set up a business that you may not necessarily be interested in, or transfer ownership of your work to someone you may not want to work with. And a written agreement. There shouldn't be surprises. You should be able to, in connecting with a fiscal sponsor, be able to reference your agreement, your program manual, any documents that help govern the relationship to protect both you and your fiscal sponsor. So this is a complicated relationship that should not really be taken informally. You want to make sure that the terms, the procedures are all written down and understood by all parties. So the benefits of our program in particular. So first, like I said, tax-deductible contributions from individuals. So that means if you receive donations from your friends and family, and they go through the proper reporting channels through Fractured Atlas, they can receive a tax deduction from those contributions. And that can be a motivating factor for many donors. It's an excellent way to be able to connect, to be able to talk to your network about how to support your project. And speaking to artists, I know it can be difficult to start the fundraising conversation. It can be hard for some people to feel like they're begging for money, like, rattling the tin cup. But offering the tax deductible contribution, I have found, has helped artists better make the case for why contributing to their project will be helpful to the donor. It offers the donor an opportunity to be a part of something larger and have the benefit of tax deduction. By being fiscally sponsored, you also have the option to apply for grants and or corporate sponsorships. Again, it becomes very difficult for an individual to walk up to, say, somebody like Bank of America or Whole Foods or anything like that to ask them to support their work. But with a formal proposal and the backing of fiscal sponsorship, it becomes easier to make that case and to submit proposals through the proper channels, because often those entities want a 501c3 federally tax exempt organization. You also get nonprofit rates. Many organizations, particularly those that offer space and that offer space rentals and or partner with artists, offer lower rates for nonprofits. And while as a fiscally sponsored project, you are not your own nonprofit, uh, you can, in a lot of cases, use your fiscally sponsored status as a means to have access to the nonprofit rates. It can happen on a case-by-case basis. It is dependent on each venue or vendor to see what they need from us, but it is definitely very possible to get reduced rates to do your work because you are fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit. We also get a review of solicitation materials. And this, I like to say, is an unsung benefit of being fiscally sponsored. Our tiny staff of 6 has reviewed thousands of grant proposals, corporate sponsorship requests, and individual appeals. We know what works. Simply, it's difficult for any one individual to read everything to every application, but that's something we've done. So having an experienced set of eyes look at your materials can be an invaluable resource for making sure that your fundraising is successful. I think that taking advantage of the review process is definitely something that can benefit your project. It can make it stronger just by having someone not immediately connected say, this is what I think is strongest and this is what people are connecting to. We also have several crowdfunding partnerships with Indiegogo and Rocket Hub. You know, crowdfunding is the most common now means of fundraising, particularly online. People are getting their friends, family, their networks together on these online spaces, showing their projects and connecting to individuals who believe in them. So with our partnerships through Indiegogo and Rocket Hub, you get the benefits of the crowdfunding campaign and the tax deductible contributions. Because most crowdfunding campaigns, if they are not run through fiscal sponsors, are not tax deductible. You also get the benefits of no double fees, so you aren't getting feed by Indiegogo and by Fractured Atlas. You're just getting the Fractured Atlas fee. So that means it can ultimately cost you less to run a campaign through fiscal sponsorship than it would without. And for our projects and artists in New York City, you get access to Materials for the Arts, which is a materials recycling program. It's a joint venture between the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York City Department of Education, and the New York City Department of Waste Management. And it is an opportunity for businesses to donate materials to this wonderfully giant warehouse in Queens, where you can then have access to those materials for free. Things like paint and fabric and office supplies and almost anything you can think of. If somebody needed to use it, if somebody chose to donate it, they can accept it, and you can have access to that. You can also have access to the Theater Development Fund's costume collection. It's another resource for having access to a huge collection of costumes for your film or theatrical production. So, requirements for Fractured Atlas fiscal sponsorship. So first, you have to be a paid member of Fractured Atlas. So we are a membership-driven organization. We have 3 levels of membership: our community level, which is free; our professional level, which is $10 per month; and our organization level, which is $20 per month. At the organization level, you can have up to 3 authorized users on the membership. So that means if you are managing a company, or if you have a project where up to 3 people are running how it goes, then the organization membership is best for you. If you're just kind of a one-man band, or if even if you have a whole team of people, but just one person is going to be handling the fundraising and finances, then a professional level is fine. And if you just want to see some of what Fractured Atlas has to offer without going to a paid membership just yet, a community level is perfect. Just to be aware, each membership can only have one fiscally sponsored project associated with it. So just know that you that even at the organization level that has multiple people, you can still only have one fiscally sponsored project. Also, to be fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas, you do need to have a legal entity with a U.S. taxpayer ID. So it can be a social security number. It can also be a corporation with a federally recognized employee identification number. We work with all types of business entities: LLCs, corporations, individuals, and sole proprietorships. But we do have to have a federally recognized tax ID number. We also require a major artistic component for the project. So while we do not curate, we are actually not judging whether or not your art is good or bad. We do want to see art at the center of your work. We are happy to let you define what your artistic endeavor is, but it does have to be artistic. We sponsor, like I said, over 3,600 projects, and they run the gamut from films to online publishing spaces to theater companies, and they can, and a few types of experiences and productions that kind of defy genre. So we are happy to connect with anyone who consider themselves an artist. But we would like to know in your application how you define your major artistic component and how you can connect that to making art more accessible, which is our mission. There also has to be a public benefit. So we can't support projects where nobody in the public gets to see it. One of the benefits of working in the not-for-profit space is it is technically, these are public funds. That's where that's why there isn't that's why they aren't taxed in the same way. It's because this work is supposed to be for the public good, for the public benefit. And what that means is people just need to be able to see your work. You can't just make a sculpture that sits on your kitchen table that nobody has access to. So one of the things you need to communicate in your application is how will the public get to see your work? Are you going to sell tickets? Are you going to publish a book? Are you going to, print a CD? How are people going to see and experience what you do? And with that, you have to operate as a nonprofit. Immediately on the application, there is a question that says, will you be working with third-party investors? And what that means is somebody who isn't involved immediately in the production of the project, giving funds to then want money back. And if you say yes to that, it'll be an immediate rejection of the application, because you have to be operating in the nonprofit space. And what that means is anybody who is getting anything out of the nonprofit has to be putting something of equal or greater value into the nonprofit. So that means we want you to be paid. Okay, so that doesn't mean you can't make money off of your work. We want you to be paid. If you're putting in 40 hours of work to make this project happen, then you should take 40 hours worth of salary or fee from your project. But you can't put in 10 hours of work and get 40 hours worth of feedback, or you can't put in $1 and get $1.50 back. That is where that's where you operate in the for-profit model, where you put in something and you get more than you put in back. So we really have to make sure that you are operating as a nonprofit. So to become fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas, like I said, you do have to be a member. And sign up is super easy. You can just go to www.fracturedatlas.org and click to join. It's very simple. It's right on the front page, and it's not that complicated, I promise. So you can head to the Services tab and select Fiscal Sponsorship. It is super easy to see. We really try to make sure that all of our information, at least as much as possible, is located online so that you can be completely in charge of making sure that you are informed and prepared. Once you get to fiscal sponsorship, strongly suggest that you read the complete program info on the website. Can't cover everything in an hour-long presentation. We want you, and it's all there. There's copies of our letter of agreement. There are copies of our fiscally sponsored projects. You can search other projects. You can also see any of our policies. So it's important to take a second and read and make sure that the fiscal sponsorship relationship is right for you. You can also specifically read the fiscal sponsorship agreement. So that lets you know what the terms of fiscal sponsorship are with us. That can be really helpful to make sure it works with what you're doing. And we're also available to ask questions. You can, if you have a question about something that you see in the fiscal sponsorship agreement, you are welcome to send us an email to support@fracturedatlas.org and ask for clarification. You can then select apply for fiscal sponsorship, and you will be directed to the application. It's very brief. It generally takes between 15 and 20 minutes. And that is, it takes between 15 and 20 minutes, and it asks for your project description, your public benefit, a brief fundraising strategy so we can see how you plan to use fiscal sponsorship, a budget, which is really an overview of how much you project it will cost to execute the project in the way you feel it should be done. There isn't a hard line on this is the right type of budget and this is the wrong type of budget. We want to just see what your vision for executing the project is, what the size and scope of that looks like, and what are the sources or plans you have to raise money for this project. You don't have to have any funds committed, but we do like to see where you think you could ask. Who do you think you could approach? So the application. In the application, we need the legal entity information. So like I said earlier, that is the person or corporation or LLC or whoever who will be kind of legally responsible for this contract. That is a person or entity that we also report the funds received to the IRS. At the end of the year, we release a 1099 MISC, 1099 miscellaneous, that if funds released are over $600, and if you're not a corporation, which reports exactly how many dollars were released, and they go to this legal entity. We need your description of your project. I like to say be clear, concise, and thorough. And I know sometimes people have conflict between concise and thorough, but we want to make sure that you are covering all of the activities you anticipate being associated with this project in a clear and concise and simple way. So you can cover a lot of ground in a nice kind of tight 3 to 5 paragraphs, which I think can be an ideal length to cover what you need to do, why you think it's important, and why you think fiscal sponsorship can be helpful. We like a brief summary of qualifications. So that's a brief bio or resume. We just want to know who is associated with the project and why, and how everyone plans to execute the things that you are suggesting. We want a budget. Like I said, that budget is really an overview of your project. We just want to understand size and scale. And the non-participatory investors question. We want to make sure that you know that you are operating as a nonprofit, that you are not soliciting or working with people who are not in the project, who are putting funds into the project and expecting funds in return. And if a lot of times we have filmmakers in particular who have questions about distribution, and we are happy to talk about that, because if you get to the point where you're working with for-profit distributors, all that means is that we just have to end the fiscal sponsorship relationship. That's not a bad thing. It's not a punishment. It's just your project is moved from the nonprofit into the for-profit space, and we have to make adjustments to the relationship accordingly. So a bit more about the process. When are applications due? Applications are due at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time on the last day of the month. So that means for this month, they would due May 31st. Like I said, it is online. The application doesn't necessarily close at 11:59. However, that can be a hard line because we do get a lot of applications every month. So even if you are able to submit at like 12:01, it's very possible that that will be in next month's review. So do be aware of the deadline. Who reviews them? They're reviewed by staff members and our board of directors. Ultimately, it is the board of directors' call whether or not a project is accepted. And like I said, we are not curating. We are looking specifically for artistic. Is it artistic in nature? Is it nonprofit / is there a public benefit? And are there non-participatory investors? Because if there are, then it's for profit and it is rejected that way. Almost all applications, if there are questions or if we need clarification, someone will reach out to you. So it's not just submit your application into the ether and then get an email saying that you've been rejected. There's usually a conversation and or a request for clarification. When will you hear back? We review the applications immediately after the end of the month and notify all applicants by the 15th of the following month. So that means if you submit your application by May 31st at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time, you will be notified of your acceptance into fiscal sponsorship by June 15th. This is just to reiterate that we do not judge the quality of your work. We simply need to see that it's artistic, that it's nonprofit, and that there is a public benefit. So we are not, like I said, making judgments on whether or not this is good work. We are making judgments on is it artistic, is it nonprofit, and is there a public benefit? So once you're sponsored, what do you do first? Reading. I always like to say you do the reading. Program manual and the fiscal sponsorship agreement. Almost everything you need to know about how fiscal sponsorship works is in the program manual and the fiscal sponsorship agreement. I understand that sometimes you're reading all this information and you don't quite get to make the connection to how it is practically, but this is the best way to kind of orient yourself and to really get an understanding of how fiscal sponsorship can work for you. You should then start thinking about your fundraising strategy. Fiscal sponsorship is most effective as a fundraising tool. So it's great to take the time and really play the long game. See what you can do over time to develop funding for your project. Are grants the way you would like to go, or do you want to focus mostly on individuals and crowdfunding? If you're doing individuals and or crowdfunding, is your audience online? How do you build an online audience to create a base for your crowdfunding? If they aren't online, what is your letter writing campaign? Where can you connect them? Where are your audiences? Are there partnerships that could be helpful? It's just a great time to start thinking about what your strategies are and how best to use them. You can explore the My Fiscal Sponsorship page on our website. There are a lot of fun links in the My Fiscal Sponsorship page. You can see a donor history. You can see all of our policies and procedures if you don't want to search through the manual. There are ways to connect to our partners, Indiegogo and Rocket Hub, but it's a great place to start familiarizing yourself with the different pieces of fiscal sponsorship and how the online tools help serve your sponsorship and membership. So things like I said, the donation history, your fund balance. You can also request funds online. There are some fun fundraising templates to get you started, particularly on the letter writing campaign that I talked about and using some of our text, and many, many more options. So it's all available for you to use. This has been our introduction to fiscal sponsorship webinar. It's really just a basic overview of everything you need to understand what we do here in fiscal sponsorship at Fractured Atlas. And this is only one in a few webinars that we offer. Every Tuesday night at 7:30, there is a different one. So this was Introduction to Fiscal Sponsorship. There's also orientation for newly accepted fiscal sponsored projects. There's an overview of individual donors and online campaigns, proposals and grants for fiscally sponsored projects, crowdfunding, and corporate and government grants. As you can see, there are more information is available on our www.fracturedatlas.org site/fiscal, and you can see what the schedule is under upcoming info sessions. You can also email us with questions at support@fracturedatlas.org. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. You can just type them into the question box. You can also, if you have questions or would like to speak to someone on the phone, you can call us between 9 and 6 at 1-888-692-7878, or you can email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. So I'm going to hold on for a little while longer, to see if any of you attendees have any questions at this point. And like I said, please type them into the questions box. I see one. Thank you. The question is, does the project have to be based out of New York? And that is a very good question. No. We sponsor over 3,600 projects nationally. That's part of the reason why our focus is on easy-to-use online tools so that you have access to your membership and your fiscal sponsorship information, even if you don't have immediate access to us. I'm happy to help. Does anybody else have any questions? Alrighty. I can hold on for a few more minutes just in case someone would like to ask something, but you are also always welcome to email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. You can also give us a call at the number presented on your screen, or you can call into our daily call every day from 3 to 3:30. A staff member is on the line to answer your questions, and you can find out more information about that at fracturedatlas.org. Alrighty. Oh, I see a question. Oh, thank you to everybody who's attended. Okay, I'm going to end the webinar now, but again, feel free to reach back out with additional questions if you have them. And I will be emailing you later in the week with a PDF of these slides and a link to the video of the session. So thank you and have a great day.